how much of my content will get cropped in the Instagram new grid size for 2025. As most of you may know, Instagram changed the grid size to a taller version. So they abandoned that square that has been in our feed since Instagram started over a decade ago and went to a taller format grid. One must say more similar to what TikTok has and also prioritizing video format. I think that's a good change. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I wanted to explain to you what gets cropped and what's the size of content you should be posting from now on. It's time to abandon the square. So if you post vertical content, we haven't been doing that in a while because even on the square grid, vertical content get cropped a lot. And it's also not that great of an experience when you have your phone and you're just watching the little strip of video or seeing a photo. It's really hard to engage with that type of content. So we have already abandoned that, haven't we, you guys? But just to show you, if you do decide to share something on Instagram that is a vertical photo or video, this is how much gets cropped. The red area goes away. So if you have like 3 people here, you're only going to see the person in the middle in your grid. This is an example of it. And then we have the 1:1 ratio, which is our square, 1080 by 1080 pixels. It's still a significant amount of the picture, especially if you combine the two parts and you realize that like maybe 1/3 of your picture, almost close to 1/3 of your picture gets cropped. It's a good amount. And if you do have like text and stuff, it might get cropped or it might get too close to the edge and your grid is going to look a little cluttered. Now, if you are posting on the tallest format that you can post, and this is for feed posts and carousels, which is the 4:5 ratio, 1080 pixels by 1350 if you're creating content in Canva or design tool, you are going to get very little of your content cropped. Just those little tiny strips here. You barely have to do any different planning for your content if you're posting on these formats. Just make sure that if you're doing text, it doesn't get super close to the edges, and you should be golden. And then if you're doing reels, this is what gets cropped. Same little margin on either side and and some on the top and bottom. To show what's the best size that you should be posting content on, it's clearly this one. And just to show you again, the Instagram sizes that you should know, just as a review, the 1:1 ratio, that's your square. It is the size of the old grid, and it still is the size of the desktop grid by the time we recorded this. So this is something that I think should always be considered. The 4:5 ratio is the taller version, the closest to the new grid size, which is this here. You can see the very little difference in size. And that should be the size of content and you're posting at all times on Instagram feed. And I would even say when you're creating your text, make it centered in the center square so it does not get cropped when people are looking at the desktop or if they still have the old grid view. And then the 3:4 ratio, that's not a size of content you can post. This is taller than the max ratio you can post, which is the 4:5, but it's something to consider because that's the size of the new grid. So it's good to be familiar with this size. And then the 9:16 ratio, which is your full screen, your reels, your stories, your reels covers, and your live covers. You don't have to worry too much about this, but the only thing I would say is that if you want to use the text you put on your reels as your cover of your reel, you don't want to create a separate cover, then definitely keep your text around the center square as well and not super close to the edges. So when it gets a little cropped, you can still read that text in your grid. Thank you so much. If you find this helpful, you can follow us at Your Social Team and subscribe below.